Initiate, you have passed the 6 trials of obfuscation. You have traversed the reverse river. You have counted the starlings in the evening murmuration while blindfolded, and, as your predecessors, you have kept the secret of the unbroken cup of the Stygiad. The tongueless masters accept your petition into the first circle. Everything you have been told so far is a lie. Novice, you have passed the obstacle of burning tongues. You have succeeded at securing the arrogant idol in the ninefold temple, and as your predecessors, you have kept the secret of the backward eye of the Stygiad. The tongueless masters accept your petition into the second circle. Everything you have been told thus far is a lie. Adept, you stand before us once more. You have memorized the 7th tome of the secret histories. You have uncovered the existence of the Deep State Guild in the Senate of the Great Consociate, and then you disproved the very possibility of its presence. A fine start. The tongueless masters accept your petition into the 3rd circle. Everything you have been told up to this point is the truth. Proficiat. It has been many years. You have mastered the trial of the Stygiad, goddess most holy. You have broken the unbreakable trance of the slumbering queen in the grave of the world deep below the earth, as all who aspire to mastery. You have prayed for 1 bi-solar year in the ruined temple of our predecessors. The tongueless masters accept your petition into the prime pyramid. Everything is a lie. Everything is the truth. It is time to open an alternate set of eyes.
Welcome to Mythtakes Happen. This is season 1 of a world-building podcast where 2 good friends talk about the partitioned city of Heliakon, a living, breathing world for you to game in, live in, and explore. I'm Chris, a Victorian teacher and writer.
He, of course, means from the state of Victoria, not from the Victorian era. Hi, I'm Aaron, a professional game master from South Australia.
We will begin with Ready, Setting, Go, where we discuss significant aspects of the setting, followed by Fable Fodder, where each host has developed setting and story aspects of a fantasy world without the interference or knowledge of the other host.
After, we take a short break, imperceptible to you, the listener, through the magic of technology, and return with World War words, weaving together connections, linking our 2 halves together, and perhaps altering some fundamental aspect of one another's contributions.
No tears, my friend. We will ruin this world together. At the end, we move to jumping to conclusions, where we discuss the whys and hows of our whats.
Look in the episode description for follow-up materials, trigger warnings, and anything else that might matter. Supplementary aids will be linked here, including summaries of our work so far, alternate takes, and GM tips, all eventually culminating in a deliciously attractive PDF at the end of the season's run.
For a few episodes, you may hear us referring to the podcast using a different name, but this is a false memory implanted in your brain by the podcast industry. Pay it no heed. Before we begin, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this great land. I am recording on the land of the Kulin Nation, home to the Boonwurrung people.
And I'm recording this on the land of the indigenous Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains.
And with that, we'll get started. Hold on, silence.
Yes.
I don't know why I did that. That's not silence.
In the grim darkness of the 21st century, there is only Ready, Setting, Go.
Welcome to episode 5 of our podcast that definitely has a name.
Definitely.
Here we will create wondrous realms for you to play in and live in and explore. And we are also going to be doing savage battle against one another, or actually maybe sort of caressing each other's ideas, which I believe has been more what we've been doing.
It's true. There has been a certain amount of conflict, but every time we start a conflict, we very, very quickly end up into caressing territory.
Our ideas rub against each other pleasingly.
It does. It's true. And much as we try not to, we try to resist and fight it.
Yeah, but our love for each other's ideas lives on and will continue
It's
forever,
just so powerful.
perhaps. It's
Just so
very
powerful.
powerful. Yeah, it's very powerful. So, actually, I don't know quite where to start this one.
Let's very quickly, let's have a quick chat about what we covered in our last episode for those who have had to wait a whole month between them.
Can you believe that? We should be like Netflix and we should just drop these all in one go.
I mean, that's not the worst idea, but I can't help but feel like this current method is working for us. Perhaps we'll get some feedback that says we should go the Netflix model and just once a year do a big
dump.
I was trying to avoid that word.
So in episode 4, I believe we had a chat about the Lodge of Snakes.
We did. I had been hinting at it repeatedly for several episodes, sneaking it in.
You've been very snake-focused, and I thought that what it was actually going to be is like Nagas, but actually it's this, which I think this works better.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be Nagas.
Yes, I'm not against the existence of Nagas, and now you've said it, I've got to admit I'm now thinking there needs to be maybe not needs, but
can I ask you a question on this podcast?
I insist. Yes.
The question is this: there has been a lot of controversy, I feel, in the past in Dungeons and Dragons, and art specifically that depicts either dragon people or snake people, right? Yes. And as usual, the controversy is about women.
And the presence of mammary glands on the female reptilian creatures?
The mammary glands, yeah. Yes. That's something that a lot of people have some very definite opinions about. Do you have definite opinions about it?
I suppose I do. And it's not particularly complicated. We're Australians. We are host to 2 of the practically only monotremes in the world, which is to say... creatures that lay eggs and then suckle their young with milk.
Yeah.
And so the existence of creatures that canonically lay eggs, like Dragonborn definitely do, and I presume the Naga, on the other hand, maybe not. Presumably so, because they are meant to be snakes. And then use mammary glands to feed their young with milk is something that's already established in nature. So basically, Dragonborn and Naga are just another form of monotreme.
More or less, my opinion on it has been that human, we're talking about the Doylist versus Watsonian perspectives here, but, the out of universe perspective and reason is that the people making these pieces of art are human. I think in universe it doesn't really matter. Like if you want to have snakes with breasts, have snakes with breasts, and if you don't, then you don't. It really could not matter less.
Whereas my opinion is that what the motivations of the artists were has the least importance.
Oh, because once you create art, you release it into the world.
Yeah?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah. I mean, that's an interesting conversation that we probably won't solve here on this podcast.
No, but we can have a conversation about. But yes, so that's snakes and Nagas. They are monotremes. We also had I did have a lot to say about the actual practice of magic in our world of Heliakon and Dilmarin.
Oh yeah, that's right. You were talking about the Vesta? The Vesta? No.
The Vesta, yes.
Vesta,
yes.
Yeah, that was I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I wanted to get into the nitty and gritty. It's one of those things that I bring from non-D&D games. Dungeons and Dragons is funny in that it talks about, a somatic components and verbal components and ingredients, whatever the hell they're called.
I think, yeah.
There's another word for it, but I can't think of what they are now, and needing of focuses. But it explains that, this spell with this class needs X, Y, and Z and goes no further. It doesn't say anything at all what it looks like when somebody casts that magic, and why they need those things. And I've always, because other games do, games like Mage, The Ascension and Awakening, but even a number of other White Wolf games, the Iron Kingdoms games also talked a great deal more about what it looks like.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do recall. I do recall those chapters when I did own the role-playing books for those systems.
That it's like actively difficult to hide magic because the runic circles appear. I thought all that was really cool and clever. It made magic part of the world, whereas sometimes I think D&D magic can feel a little, it's just magic gun. You pull your magic gun out, you pull the trigger, and that's all you have to think about it.
I think with Dungeons and Dragons especially, as it has grown sort of into a global phenomenon, and we have so many clever and wonderful podcasts of actual plays and stuff like that, it caters more and more towards people putting their own interpretations there as to how those things work, but doesn't actually give people those tools to do that. I feel like, and what happens eventually is that it becomes quite generic.
Yeah,
I think is that a controversial opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, the very genericness, universality of D&D is one of its major strengths, but it doesn't then talk about within the text of the books about how to make each individual magic more personalized and more specialized. There are a number of fantastic, I don't want to call them amateur made, but let's face it, they're made for the love of the game, that do talk about these sorts of things, and I love that, but it really kind of ought to be in the player's guide for the players to say, look, this is what it looks like when a wizard casts spells, this is what it looks like when a sorcerer casts spells, in broader terms, but still, in broad terms, but still more specific than just magic in general. And then a section in the DMG for the dungeon master to go like, cool, here's in the base setting of Forgotten Realms, this is why and how magic works.
Yeah, exactly. And I think especially since like 5th edition rules, they're quite a streamlined rule set.
Yeah.
It is quite egregious that stuff is not there, especially for new players, and also that the correct tools don't really exist for these players to put their own spin on it outside of just saying, oh, do whatever you want. I think some people need a little more structure.
I mean, that's the point of a tabletop RPG, is that you don't need an RPG to sit around a table and talk and make up a story, but it is a lot easier to do so with the foundation of a game to play from and the walls and the support.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, in the early 2010s, I think there was this big sort of, I don't know if it was controversial at the time. I remember a lot of people having many heated arguments segregating tabletop RPGs and what they called story games, which was
the Baron Munchausen side of things.
Yeah, that's that sort of stuff. And of course now there are way more what would have been called story games available on the internet. People are playing them. Even some of the bigger podcasts are doing one shots with them, and they tend to be like hyper focused on one particular thing. So instead of describing a whole realm, it's like, well, you're a goblin now, you're a dirty little moist guy, what do? All the rules are about how to be a disgusting little guy.
Right. I must admit, I hadn't run into that particular kerfuffle, and it does, my immediate thought is, no, I will never side that just wants to call all of them tabletop RPGs. That's the side I'm on. Whether you're playing a very, very crunchy, rules-heavy game, or whether you're playing with pieces of paper and pencils and nothing else, you're still essentially doing the same thing.
It's still essentially the same thing. I think probably those terminologies are more useful when you're discussing stuff with other creators to sort of distinguish what you're doing and what you're not doing, things like that. But I don't think for the for the general public that it makes any sense at all. They're just games. No. They're games, aren't they? We're playing games,
And we sit around a table or all together online on a PC to make a collaborative story. It's that collaborative storytelling is really what we're doing.
Exactly.
I can see it being a useful thing when talking to your players. I mean, it's absolutely crucial.
That could be it as well. Yeah.
So one of my best mates, and hopefully somebody will be working in the podcast space with a mate called Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Sean. He's a real incredibly creative fellow, and I really wanted to get him into RPGs, and I convinced him and his wonderful wife to play a little short RPG. Because he's a massive into comics and so forth, I adapted Aberrant to play a Marvel game. And
the new Aberrant?
No, this was before the new Aberrant came out. So
okay.
the first edition. I made it a little easy. I made their characters for them, and we sat down and I sketch mapped and set them through, and it failed. It was not good. I think Justine had a good time. It did not work for Sean at all.
Yeah, I think I remember when I first actually even heard about role-playing games. I heard about role-playing games when I was looking at pictures of Warhammer when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
I say a child, we were teenagers. And I believe what I did actually is I printed out I think it must have been a 3rd edition by then, like a quick start booklet.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't quite understand what was going on there, but and I brought it to school. I think I actually showed you, and you introduced me to that hybrid game that you had running.
Basically beat the snot out of stuff.
Yeah, basically beat the snot out of stuff, where I played a giant orange rabbit with a grappling hook.
I will discuss BBSOS and its various successes in another episode, perhaps even in a special. Aaron's first attempt at creating an RPG from scratch.
That experience, it wasn't D&D. It wasn't what I at the time was like. I was just reading what it could be, because I think the thing that attracts me to war games and role-playing games is the same thing, which is just the idea of having a story that you can share with someone else, right? That's the beauty of it for me. It's I suppose it's that same feeling that people a long time ago had when they were telling stories around fires and things like that. It's the same thing, just with some rules, because we like shiny objects and rolling stuff
And it's, as I think we said fairly much earlier on in our podcast, that it's a lot easier to be creative within a box. When you've got everything that you can possibly do, it's nearly impossible to choose.
Yeah, exactly. And that really opened my mind. I still have those thought pictures that being in that game, the first role-playing game that I was ever in, you put inside my brain.
Oh.
I don't remember I remember only the very broad strokes, but I remember some of the setting that I had in my head. I remember some of the things that I did, and I remember that it felt amazing. And it was great, and that's why, we still do these things now.
Yeah.
I'd like to do more of them, to be honest, but, life.
Actually, I'll come back a little bit of a circle back to our mate Sean. Well, my mate. You'll get to be his mate soon.
Hi, Sean.
So that... That first game fell flat, but anybody who might follow Sean online, and I thoroughly encourage you to do so, whether you follow his Instagram stuff, you'll discover what I'm talking about, or his reporting for the Advertiser and his podcast with Daniel Panozzo, the Just Lawful, amazing.
He's just like Clark Kent or Jimmy Olsen.
Yes. I'd put him in the Clark Kent thing. He's genuinely heroic, in my opinion, which is why I thought role-playing games would be perfect for him. Creative, heroic. What I discovered after talking with him, because we're good enough mates that he was able to tell me, I didn't have fun. And we talked about why he didn't have fun, as any GM should with their players. And what I learned was that, because he told me so much about his own telling of stories with his daughter and his own life when he was a kid. And what we worked out was that he always had figures. He always had toys to play with. And that's what he needed. As of right now, he's the leader on it, but I've been helping it basically since the inception, have been turning the old Hero Quest board game into something much grander, much more like
that's
an
right.
RPG.
Yes, I do remember when we discussed this last. It's quite amazing.
I talk about it a lot. So there was a man whose first experience with RPGs was not great, and that was my fault for not talking with my player and really understanding what they needed. But when we did have that honest conversation, he's now so passionate about it. I can't remember how many pages he's got, but it is an astonishing amount. He has a small novel's worth of setting and fluff and so forth. I very much much hope one day to do an interview with him as part of our podcast.
Oh, yeah, that would be fascinating. I would love that.
Yeah.
That's great. So you turned him. You did it.
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
Yeah,
there you go.
Well, I think this feels like a good place to end our very lengthy introduction and move into our fable fodder.
Let's move into our fable fodder.
In the grim darkness of the 21st century, there is only fable fodder.
We had a little bit of a chat where I said that I have so much stuff that I want to share on this episode, next episode, every episode, that I'm not quite sure what to choose. So I have a list actually of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have a list of 7.
Okay.
And I was thinking that you could help me work out what to share this episode.
Oh, how am I going to do that?
So the way you're going to do that is I'm going to read you the titles that some of them pertain closely to what I'm writing about, and some of them might be a little more obscure, but then you could tell me what you'd like to hear about.
Okay. No, I love this idea. You're giving titles to your sections now, which I always appreciate.
I've decided to do that because I think it does help. Eventually, it will help with our PDF document to have it all in nice sections.
It does. Please do check the links below to our PDF documents. Every episode gets a free document, which will all be collated at the end and made all prettified and pretty looking.
Yep, and we promise to teach Aaron how to speak by the time that this reaches your ears. Okay, so let me read you my titles. So the first one is The Glorious Cosmology. The second one is Gangs of South Heliakon. The third one is There's Something Wrong with the Gnomes.
Okay.
The fourth one is The Merchants' Bank of Benson, Benson and Byrde.
Uh-huh.
The next one is Duties and Mandates, The Upright Doctrine. The second to last one is The Districts of North Heliakon. And the very last one is Bloodwoods of the West and the Frog Country.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, those are some fantastic titles. I am fascinated by them all. I think I would, since we've come off the last episode where we did a lot of talk about magic and some sort of very high-level things, you had the Stygiad, which got very mystical.
Oh, the Stygiad. Oh, you know what? I was actually just thinking the other day about your addition to the Stygiad, made it like, the secrets within secrets within secrets is just absolutely fantastic. It's just, I could not think of anything more perfect to go with that.
I appreciate that. I got to admit, great ideas inspires even better ideas.
That's it.
So what I'm going to think today, given that I myself have gone with a little bit of a theme, I'm going to suggest we move right away from the big stuff. As much as I am genuinely interested to what's weird about gnomes and the great cosmology, let's do some real down-to-earth stuff. So there was a bank and some gangs and some suburbs.
Very good. Let's start with the bank.
Okay.
Let's start with the bank. So this is the Merchants' Bank of Benson, Benson and Byrde. Byrde. So one of the most imposing structures on the southern side of the Serpentine Wall is the Bank Building of Benson, Benson and Byrde, the wealthiest financial organization in the world. It is a huge building of marble, stone, its columns decorated with statuettes of the gods, as well as historically significant scenes from the foundation of the Great Consociate Empire. Like many early banking institutions, this too started as a merchant bank of sorts some centuries prior, lending to farmers against field crops, thereby securing grain sale rights on the harvest. High-risk, high-reward transactions which eventually culminated in the trading of grain debt, insurance for crop failures, while slowly transforming these institutions into the more modern financial organizations that we see today. They are rumored to be the secret movers and shakers of the political sphere, working behind the scenes and nevertheless holding a great amount of power over rulers, politicians, and bureaucrats alike. Just as an aside, actually, and I know that banking history might be a very boring subject for some people,
but truly not. Some of my own history studies have been around banking, and it's fascinating.
This came about because I was actually reading an article about the history of banking in medieval Europe,
which is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The poor knights, the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah, look, there's so many. Like the way that it is an incredible showcase of discrimination An incredible showcase of just mind-blowing achievements of like culturally finding such a niche to disrupt an unexploited market.
Yeah.
We are talking, of course, about the history of the Jewish people.
Yeah, because it is about this intersection of economics, religion, politics.
Yeah.
Because for people who don't know, just really quickly, the Catholic Church made the lending of money a sin.
Yeah.
Was it simony?
I think it was simony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
So non-Catholics were the only ones that could do it, and generally speaking, being non-Catholic was a big problem unless you were a Jewish person. So
absolutely,
it's genuinely fascinating, and unfortunately, it did of course mean that they frankly owed a lot of people would owe them a lot of money, which gave them a lot of very real-world reasons to engage in a lot of the awful things that happened to the Jewish people in the medieval era.
Very unfortunate, but their contributions basically transformed finance and society at the time. It's just absolutely fascinating.
It's true.
Anyway.
Back to Delmarin and Heliakon.
Back to Delmarin and Heliakon. The owners of this bank have always been the heads of three quite wealthy and important families, and I'm going to talk about them just a little bit now. The Bensons, the first Bensons of Benson, Benson and Byrde. The Bensons are halflings who hail from the warm Mediterranean-style Sondosos Islands, known for the best wine in the Great Consociate Empire. The Bensons themselves are a provincial noble family whose ancestors were once the rulers of the Sondosos, before being subsumed by the Consociate. The Bensons would very much like to have a conarch in the twin senate of Spiraxis. Certainly this is not outside the realms of possibility, as they are the strongest and wealthiest of the three families. The current head of the household, who makes frequent trips to Heliakon, is Moira Benson, who is well known for her patronage of the Hungry Heliahog Tavern, where she conducts much of her business, as opposed to her much nicer residence near the centre of town. The other Bensons, no relation, are a secretive clan of tieflings, with rumoured links to the Stygiad Council, who themselves, for centuries, have been based in the low hills of the Sigiliac provinces, in the centre of the Empire's domains on Delmarin. They are frequently referred to as the Sigiliac Bensons, something which is seen as a bit of an insult, as they consider themselves to be the original Bensons. They are masters of a small semi-autonomous realm known as the Protectorate of Benelon. The family are known recluses who nevertheless have a reputation as generous supporters of the common folk. Whenever natural disasters strike, it is always the tiefling representatives of the Benson family who are there distributing food and blankets, as well as competitive small loans for those who wish to rebuild.
Of course.
Of course. The current head of the family is a young man named Velcor Ben Benson. Not much is known about him except that he ascended to the position recently after the death of his father. The Byrdes, in contrast, are the weakest of the three families, although they still hold a significant amount of power. It's all about money, isn't it? They're actually a small association of two separate families of gnomes and dragonborn. If that strikes anyone as odd, then the story of their foundation will likely not clarify that much. It uses phrases like strengthened through unity and joined by common ethics and a shared history, although the narrative itself obscures any real information of value. Their origins are almost certainly in the Chasm City-states in the deep south of the world, an area unclaimed and unwanted by either great power. It is a place with an ever-changing political geography where few nations last longer than a generation before being subsumed by another powerful group. Currently, their household is located in the southern partition of Heliakon. Family heads alternate between gnomes and dragonborn. The current head of the family is Pekoslav Byrde, an old dragonborn who has been pushing for the bank's official expansion into the territories of the Unfettered League. After all, he is quoted as saying, "Money doesn't understand borders." That's about it.
So you said that the Byrdes were two different families that have joined together. Is the other lesser family the Bees, by any chance?
It's very funny, but no. They all consider themselves the Byrdes.
Right. Well, that's very interesting, and that my GM brain is sort of going like, oh, okay, yeah, now they're going to have one individual within one of the three families that's working against the other two families to get a leg up within the overall business, because when banking and money is at stake, then anything is possible.
Exactly. I think for me, I find this sort of thing interesting because finance is an important part of Dungeons and Dragons.
It is.
In terms of, like, even in the earliest editions, you killed a goblin, you got some gold.
It's something that you and I need to perhaps have a conversation together, because do we want to have a thing where we just talk about coinage in the realms of Delmarin?
I have a feeling that we should have a very brief discussion about it. I don't know how interesting coins are to people.
Well, I had a notion, and perhaps this is not the right place to talk about it. I'm going to mention it now, that perhaps we could do a little short chat, you and I, about coinage and calendars. Because they're both kind of the boring vegetable part of creating a setting. They're necessary and needed and important, but let's face it, a little less useful, just a little less interesting than grand.
Well, I certainly do have a list of the months in my notes. It's actually partly what I used for that Lyman Jarouche thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's do that. We're booking it in. We'll have a conversation.
We'll book it in.
All right.
Okay.
Cool. Well, on to my first piece of Fable Follow.
Yes, please.
As I said, I'm going for a bit more of a down-to-earth aspect this episode.
Brilliant.
And you'll very quickly notice I've got a bit of a theme going on.
Okay, I like your themes. I'm all over the place, but the themes, I like this.
Oh, thank you. For me, it is a way of trimming these lots of ideas down into something that I can choose what to do in an episode.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
So I'm going to tell you about the holiday of Fettersval.
Ooh, Fettersval.
Fettersval. The national...
I like the sound. Sorry.
There you go.
Ooh. I was just going to say I like the sound of that. Holidays and festivities, I think, are a very important part of culture that we should talk about.
Well, I have to give you a little bit of credit because it was the existence of the Heliakon that got my brain down this track. The Heliakon is not mentioned in any way, shape, or form, but that was the seed from which this whole thing grew.
So what you're saying is that I gave you my seed?
Yes. I wish I didn't say that, but that is in fact what I said. Fettersval. The national holiday and feast day for the Unfettered League is Fettersval, celebrating the formation of the League and the commitment to freedom and equality the Blended nations stand for. It begins in the morning with all citizens putting on shackles and chains and going to work in them, ensuring that what work is done is accompanied by as much groaning and clanking of chains as possible. This is all quite performative. The shackles and chains are mostly fake, and no one is really expecting much work to actually be accomplished. Those who do have vital roles that must go on even during feast days wear their chains and shackles around necks and waists so they can get on with business as needed. But come mid-morning, a carillon of bells will signal the young children of the League to dash from their schools and homes and tear down the streets and roads, reciting the Fettersval validation as loudly as they can. Would you like me to recite the Fettersval validation?
I would be disappointed if you didn't.
I'm so delighted to see you say that. Throw off your shackles and throw off your chains, no longer be forlorn. Be gone are your sorrows, be gone are your pains, the Unfettered League is born.
That's brilliant. We do need to put that to music.
Okay, yes, why not? That'll be my singing debut. It's a proud moment when a child is old enough to be one of these free runners, as they are called, for they are encouraged to be as raucous as possible and to dash into businesses and help the chain dispose of their chains. And for the coming of the free runners heralds the casting off of the shackles and chains and the celebration to come.
Brilliant.
The rest of the day is largely celebrated out of doors with a city or town-wide party. Families that can afford to bring food and beverages out to the street to share as revelers come by to talk and laugh and eat and drink. The wealthy will host vast spreads in community spaces, and places of hospitality will have cheap deals. As a celebration of freedom and equality, all rank and hierarchy is ignored. Indeed, the worst faux pas someone can make on Fettersval is to try to lean on one's position in society for gain. A recent addition to Fettersval, began by the Stratomark Cephei Miracor from previous episodes, is a procession of the great, grand, and wealthy of Heliakon that winds from the east to the west with the express purpose of allowing the people to mock and insult their leaders. The marchers wear humble smocks and simple shoes and are expected to graciously accept the jeers of the crowd and the occasional flung vegetable. In recent years, some of the wealthier members of the procession will even toss small bags of coins to those that deliver especially clever or pointed insults.
Nice. I like the sound of that. It sounds like a real holiday.
Yeah.
We should do this.
And I wanted to sort of have... Holidays are not static, they're always changing.
They evolve, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So attendance in the procession is not mandatory, and it is fascinating that some of the more tyrannical owners of businesses and harsher council members are the ones that attend every year, and they receive the greater amount of the crowd's punishment. But it seems that this acts as some kind of release valve for people's frustrations, calming them for another year of ill treatment, as there's certainly been no noticeable improvement in the conditions of the poor since the tradition began, despite the noble intentions otherwise.
Interesting. So, I mean, I suppose it's a bit of good PR, isn't it?
Yes.
I imagine, like, in a lot of countries, celebrating the achievements of the culture and things like that is very important for nationalism.
Yeah, I was drawing on one of my favourite books is The Count of Monte Cristo, and fairly early on, a number of the younger characters meet the Count for the first time while they're in Rome during Carnival. Dumas' description of Carnival, of everybody just going crazy and the differences between the commoners and nobles, breaks down a little bit. I love that image, so I wanted to take something like that for Heliakon.
That's great. I really like that. I have some ideas for this actually, which is great. That's what we want. Oh my god!
All right,
brilliant.
Let's go for your next one.
Let's go with the gangs. I'm going to go with the gangs. Is there anything finer than gangs? Have you ever been in a gang?
No. Or at least if I had, I didn't notice it, which means it was a very chill gang.
Do you think you could be in a gang but not know it?
I'm daft enough that it's plausible.
Okay. Let's talk about the Gangs of South Heliakon. Very different from the Gangs of North Heliakon. That also has gangs. I feel like every place has a gang, should have gangs. Does Adelaide have gangs? Yes.
Almost certainly, yes.
I know Melbourne has gangs. Sometimes I see young people on the train, and I am very scared of them. They seem to be talking in a dialect that I don't quite understand. They use words like no cap and riz. I don't know what those things mean. And their hair looks just like noodles, uncooked noodles.
Disturbing.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the more interesting than real life, perhaps, Gangs of South Heliakon. So South Heliakon is home to a number of street gangs which hold a delicate kind of balance of both terrorizing the citizens and yet also kind of keeping the peace in rougher areas. Authorities are constantly on the lookout for ways of curtailing gang activity, but like in many such urban environments, a great many officers are easily bribable. Along with spies, luminarchist cells, local unrest, and countless other threats to metropolitan security, the city militia of the Southern Partition is stretched too thinly across the city to handle any one of the gangs head-on. Many of the gangs also have connections, which bring in embargoed goods from the north, and so a complicated relationship kind of exists here. I'm going to outline 4 gangs. The first of the gangs are called the Butternut Boys. The Butternut Boys are the biggest street gang in South Heliakon. They are led by one of the very few gnomes in the city, Belfry Butters. Belfry is an old man close to a century upon this earth, and he has seen the steady rise of the consociate and its looming decline. In his youth, Belfry Butters was a thief of some distinction until an unlucky heist cost him both his hands. Unfortunate, for he is reported to have been quite the calligrapher and forger at the time. He has since had them replaced with crude prosthetics which pinch at his skin constantly and drive him into fits of barely controlled rage. He could have them replaced with finer versions, and it is unclear why he has not had that done. For the last 6 decades, Belfry Butters has been the mentor for a gang of thieves and violence enthusiasts who have grown into a small but formidable army upon the streets of Heliakon. His business now is smuggling, protection rackets, and the movement of people. Reuniting families is his passion, but human trafficking for any reason pays much better. He is known as a fair but brutal boss, and many who have crossed him have ended up face down in the river or cleverly disguised as food for pigs. His gang's name comes from the commonly acknowledged idea that Belfry Butters is a nutter. The Butternut Boys are easy to spot on the streets of Heliakon. They all wear yellow hats and neckties of a colour according to their rank in the organisation. Orange for youths and novices, blue for older and more experienced gang members, red for veterans, and black for gangsters close to Belfry's inner circle.
Violence enthusiasts is a phrase that I want to use again.
Violence enthusiasts. Yeah. I think the difficulty here is that I've never been in a gang, but I have watched a lot of television shows and read a lot of books about gangsters.
Yeah.
And they do really, a lot of them seem to enjoy violence.
It does seem to be a consistent theme, and violence enthusiasts really does feel like something they ought to put on their business cards.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's so much better than thug.
It is much better than thug, yeah. So the 3 other gangs are the Chods, the Hobbs, and the Tomeworms. Though technically 3 separate gangs, the Chods, Hobbs, and Tomeworms of South Heliakon are constantly interacting and exchanging members. A great deal of interpersonal drama drives the lives of these gang members, who mostly grew up on the streets and treat the gangster life as a kind of theatrical play which informs their sense of belonging and family. The petty squabbles of these gangs often spill out onto the streets, and it is many of these gang members who find themselves inside a holding cell and likely to be shipped off somewhere far away for hard labour, or perhaps simply hanged. Hung? Hanged.
Hanged. Yes, meat is hung, humans are hanged.
Correct. Nevertheless, all 3 organisations hold a certain amount of power, and each gang fills a vital niche in the underground life of the city. The Chods are one of the oldest gangs of this city. Technically, there are Chods in the northern partition as well, but due to limited communication across the Serpentine Wall, the northern Chods have splintered and changed considerably. The southern and northern Chods see themselves as the legitimate representatives of this group. As for the southern Chods, they are made up largely of street urchins and unloved and unremembered lower classes of society. Petty crime is the order of the day for Chods, and many a purse is snatched and many a pocket picked by these nimble thieves. The Chods are under the control of Viola Crobb, a young Goliath woman who desperately wants to, and I quote, take the Chods to the next level. Under her leadership, the Chods have taken more risks, which has led to greater rewards, but also a higher rate of incarceration and, unfortunately, execution. The Chods are easily spotted due to the distinct under-eye scars they receive as part of their initiation process. Secondly, we have the Hobbs. The Hobbs are a dangerous gang of violent and, more often than not, drunk young men. No women allowed in this one. Their leader, a scarred and crippled former consociate soldier named Argon Plexton, is a wheelchair-bound orc with an unpleasant disposition. He hates authority, despises both the city militia and the army that he sees as having failed him. Mostly, the Hobbs run about town getting into fights and are known for baiting officers on the beat into dangerous and compromising situations. The Hobbs are well known for targeting out-of-towners and merchants, threatening them with violence if they do not give up their wares and coin. Argont seems relatively uninterested in exactly what his boys are doing each night, so long as it doesn't bring attention to him, and so long as he gets his share. Wealth flows up after all. The Hobbs all dress in cheap brown suits and are sometimes known as the barbarous gents. And thirdly, we come to the Tomeworms. The Tomeworms are, unfortunately for them, the poorest gang in this triad. They are made up mostly of young former Osmotes, who had given up the profession or been pushed out before their bodies and minds became a liability to their channeler. It is well known that many Osmotes form unhealthy relationships with their channelers, and this inevitably becomes a problem for both. The Tomeworms are forever scarred by the experiences of being used as filters for sorcerers' undertakings, and many gravitate towards the gang as a kind of replacement family structure. They get caught up in the petty politicking of the Chods and Hobbs. Currently, the Tomeworms are led by a young tiefling girl named Milburga Woodmead. It is unclear how such a young person runs a street gang, but rumours indicate she may have been left with some innate sorceress foibles that helped cement her authority. The Tomeworms are largely involved in petty theft and, on occasion, the recruitment of younger street urchins to appease the city's growing need for Osmotes. Tomeworms are easy to spot because they tend to have that hollowed-out, used-up expression most Osmotes eventually get. Their garb is not so standardized, except each must wear about their neck a loose-fitting red cravat. And that is all about the gangs of South Heliakon.
I love it so much. There's a lot to work with there. Yeah, I can see how those 3 gangs sort of, work with each other, that the young cut purses of the Chods might grow into being the thugs and standover men of the Hobbs, that they can each sort of fill each other's weaknesses whilst also nibbling and working each other's territories. No, love it.
And I think this kind of fulfills that almost necessity in D&D of having thieving street urchins.
It's a good trope for a reason. Let's give them another event where they can easily pickpocket people, because
I love that,
my theme continues with the holiday of Gruvolly.
Gruvolly, yes, please.
The holy day of Gruvold celebrates his life, his death, and ascension, along with the lessons he taught the people of his empire. Notionally celebrating the day that he formalized the Great Consociate's existence and became the Emperor at rest, and the day, many, many years later, that he died on the walls of Spiraxis and rose to become a god. Though historians dispute the veracity of them occurring on the same calendar day, they do so very quietly.
Very nice.
In the modern era, Gruvolly begins, as all holy days do, with a great complete service to the god. Gruvold being the patron god and emperor of the Great Consociate, naturally the service for him is greater still. For those who cannot make it into the packed temples, there are many held in the parks and squares around every city and town in the Consociate. Woe to those who do not attend. For anything but the most extreme of reasons, there are few things more shameful. After a long morning service, the day turns into a celebration of the two things that Gruvold gave this world: an honourable system of martial prowess and the civilised laws of the Great Consociate. The former is honoured by many demonstration bouts between Gruvollian monks and soldiers, and the many tournaments of the same. The ones for the young and the teens are very important for a youthful follower of Gruvold, for it is here one might feel the first touch of Gruvold's fists upon you, calling the lucky one to a lifetime of service.
Ooh, I like that a lot.
The most attended events are the Bouts of Magisterial Might, where querents before the Great Consociate courts mediate disputes with bare fists, and the even more popular Punishment Bouts, where previously honoured criminals can earn a sliver of their former glory back by fighting against overwhelming odds at their execution. There are even examples of the guilty winning these grossly unfair fights, and such are the subject of many tales. The evening is supposed to be a time of contemplation and meditation, and it is with growing disgust that the elders observe that many of the younger folk prefer to party loud and hard instead. They tut and shake their heads and mutter about how much longer they can call the Consociate great with such disrespect going on. Gruvolly is celebrated in the other lands, even in the Unfettered League, for it is unwise to insult any god. It's just simply a much smaller affair in these other nations. There has even been many Brak songs written for the day that are performed with great gusto by the many Orcan who honour Gruvold. This particular fact drives the Arch Templari of the true Temple of Gruvold and Heliakon into a spitting rage, and the many fist and hand Templari beneath them expect that one of these fits will kill the Arch Templari one of these years.
That's very good. That is very, very good, Aaron.
Thank you. I had fun with that one. But,
I like that a lot. That sparked a lot of ideas as well, actually.
So my next bit will be two sort of things that don't connect at all, but sort of put in for time. So if you want to do your nice big third chunk on the suburbs of the north,
the districts of North Heliakon. So North and South Heliakon have slightly different terminologies, essentially for the same things. The various divisions in their sections of the city. In the north, the city held by the Unfettered League is divided into districts, each administered by a local bureaucrat, whereas in the south, the Consociate suburbs are divided into burghs and looked after by local burgomeisters. The following is an attempt to flesh out the geography of Heliakon a little bit and talk about the structure of those districts, those suburbs, those sections. I
love it. Very useful.
So what I'm going to do is I have a very small write-up for each of the districts. One is very silly, but let's see how it goes. So the first district is Andalon. Andalon is, and by the way, this is in alphabetical order. Andalon is a district well known for its colourful and intricately patterned textiles, as well as large pillows stuffed with sewer eagle feathers. Here exist a variety of vibrant and popular inns and taverns which cater to the diverse tastes of the fast-growing city. Sewer eagles, I had to include them.
You did.
I've got another type of eagle that I wrote in somewhere, perhaps even in this section, and I may have forgotten, so we'll see. Bentworth. Bentworth is the largest concentration of humans in Heliakon. Although not a wealthy place, its inhabitants nevertheless take great pride in decorating their district with murals and prayer flags. It is known for its proliferation of that most useless and shameful pursuit, philosophy. Yeah, sorry, bud. Clagwyn. Clagwyn is the home of the Brazen Dome and Bright Market, an area filled with shops, stalls, as well as local and foreign merchants. It is a relatively wealthy district, although as most merchants are aware, their fortunes can turn at any time. I thought that we might have a district for the Brazen Dome and Bright Market.
I love all this connection.
Next we have Clogberg. Clogberg is built around a large crater which has long ago been filled with water. It is a curious place well used to delvers who try to dive to the bottom for the forgotten treasures of the past. Unfortunately, it is infested with lake eagles. Their colossal forms often seen bumping up against the hundreds of fishing boats which encircle the crater and ply its waters for their greatest bounty, the self-sourcing calendar fish. Yeah, that's the one where it has lake eagles.
Lake eagles. Uh-huh.
The lake eagles, yeah.
Yep.
If there's sewer eagles, I feel like there can be lake eagles.
It definitely feels like they underwent speciation at some point.
Yeah, that's how you know it's fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, get ready for the pipe eagles. Anyway, Melodwin, of course. Melodwin is an impoverished area well known for its musicians and the mysterious guild of conductors who make sure music can be appropriately enjoyed by the masses in its pure form.
I hope everyone remembers Melodwin from episode 1.
And if you don't, go back to episode 1, re-listen to episode 1, and then come back right here.
Yeah.
Or maybe finish listening to this episode, then listen to episode 1.
And then come back and listen to this episode all over again, because why not?
Actually, that's really good. That's how we get, that's called engagement.
Yeah.
I think.
Do that. Thank you.
Yeah, do that. The next one is Mossbowl Lakes. Mossbowl Lakes is populated mostly by tieflings and dragonborn. Do we say tieflings or tieflings?
I think you say whatever you damn well like.
I'm going to say tieflings. It is famous for its pugilistic history and home to the Stone Circle, a well-regarded arena for official bouts and duels. Many disputes are solved in the circle, and countless bets are won and lost about its perimeter. The lakes of Mossbowl Lakes never existed here in Heliakon, and the area is actually named after another region entirely. The Octaneron. The Octaneron is a district built into the body of a huge stone statue. The colossal figure stands close to 100 meters tall and depicts a broad-shouldered woman carrying a large spiked mace. The woman's head has 8 faces, each one bearing a different expression. When Heliakon was rediscovered by the Great Consociate Empire, there were already ancient rooms and homes carved into its body, and these have expanded over the last century or so. Next we have Riverwin. Riverwin was built over the Ionid River, a poor choice of the Consociate that once controlled it, which leads to a great deal of pollution downstream. Especially egregious is the fact that the district is home to leather crafters and tanners, professions, not conducive to cleanliness. Nevertheless, there's nowhere else for them to go. That's just where they live.
For those who would like to know, but in traditionally leatherworking and dyeing and so forth, used a great deal of urine and feces in the process.
Yeah, not very forward thinking.
No.
After Riverwin, we have Snadview. Snadview has a very good view of the Snad. Everyone can see the Snad from their homes. All residents of Snadview leave offerings to the Snad in the hope it goes away, but this has not yet worked. The Snad watches them and looks through their windows at night. Next district is Ungerban.
So, okay, you're not going to explain what the Snad is then?
No.
Okay.
I don't know what it was. I was actually, I had quite a lot of cider when I wrote that one. Anyway, perhaps you can tell us.
Yeah, perhaps.
Ungerban. Ungerban is the richest district of northern Heliakon, home to the Unfettered League's Regional Occupation Council, as well as the embassies of those nations which recognize its claim to this part of the city. It is home to a great many halflings and humans. And lastly, we have the district of Wayfair Village. Wayfair Village was once on the outskirts of Heliakon, home to a small and insular community of elves who worshipped a fictional pantheon of gods, hoping to help them manifest in the heavenly realms. Over the last 25 years of occupation, it has been transformed into a small and popular mercantile district, containing cobblers, wheelwrights, tailors, and dyers. The elven community here now resents this reality as it believes the diverse beliefs of the people around them dilute their sacred efforts. And those are the districts of North Heliakon.
All right, some great deal of inspiration going on there. Fantastic names across the board.
Thank you.
I'm not entirely sure I want to think too much more about the Snad, but I will.
He's gonna get you. He just watches. He doesn't like getting it. You know what? I don't know about the Snad, but yeah. Anyway, perhaps it's a expansion for later. Perhaps it's an expansion for today.
I don't know. I'm going to let it percolate a little bit and see what comes up during World War Words.
Let it marinate. Let it cook.
I have a third holiday. This one's a bit shorter, and it is more broadly celebrated.
Oh, a shorter holiday. Okay.
Yes, it is, well, shorter in description. It's the same length as all the others. It is called Catacord. And interesting enough, since we haven't mentioned a lot of halflings, but you've brought them up a couple of times today, I too am going to mention them. So Catacord is a day of mourning for all those that have died and all that has been lost. Catacord is observed by all the successor nations of the Concordate. Most are unaware that tradition has its roots with the halflings halflings who were long the heart of the concordate art, theatre and literature, and thus a great many halfling words have made their way into common parlance, Catacord being one of them.
Interesting.
Among the halflings, a cord is akin to a clan, tribe or noble house, and Catacord means the severing or destruction of a cord. Each culture brings their own unique flavour and traditions when commemorating Catacord, but all still tie the U-cord. The U-cord is a complex web made from a single piece of rope or string, twisted and tied and secured to several points. Families or communities will gather to tie the U-cord and whisper aloud the names of those they wish to remember at each knot. At sunset, the U-cord is cut at several points as the gathered cry and wail in mourning until the final cut is made and the U-cord collapses. The traditional halfling U-cord has 5 cuts that represent the 5 lost halfling cords, but this varies from place to place and community to community.
Interesting. I like the sound of that. This is very, I like the way that you evoke these holidays, because I actually have not given that much thought to like holidays and special occasions and things like that. But, in a lot of ways, these are the things that sort of highlight our cultures, aren't they?
And tie people together. And as I said, when you start talking about the Halia dog, that led me into the realm of sports and festivals, which is why my next section is on a sport.
Ooh, a sport. Okay.
Yes.
Now, how much can I ask before you do this part? How much do you know about sport?
I have played a number, some of them even by choice. In fact, I was
of sports.
Yes.
Now, you remember, billiards does not count as a sport.
No, and I don't think chess is either, although I'm frankly terrible at chess.
Chess is only a sport if it's like strip chess.
I played cricket for a very long time, up until I was about 14 or 15.
Strip cricket, you say?
No. Unfortunately, bullying meant that nerdy Aaron did not do well through the school sports. So despite that, I was going to state cricket training camps and so forth. I ended up dropping it, and I genuinely not reject it. What's the word I'm looking for? Regret, thank you. Yeah. Regret that to this day. I did play AFL, Australian Rules Football, but that was very much not by choice.
That's an egg-shaped ball.
It is, and there's a great deal of running and an enormous amount of athleticism, but I find the watching games to be, like, once you get past the fact that people are very athletic, there's just not enough strategy or tactics for it to interest me.
I like when people invite me over either to their houses or to, like, an oval where football is being played, because I actually really just enjoy buying hot dogs.
Or Halia dogs, perhaps.
Halia dogs, yeah.
So,
okay, tell us about the sport, please.
The sport of Platterbone.
Mm-hmm.
Platterbone is the most ubiquitous and ancient sport in Delmarin, where it has many names. There are practically no communities that do not play some version of this most venerable of games. Traditionally made from the flat top of a stump charger's skull, the Platterbone itself is a lightweight, plate-sized disc with the edges gently curving down. When it is thrown, it spins and floats through the air despite its utterly non-magical origins. With the decline in the stump charger population, most modern Platterbones are made from Cesian stronggrass or a laminate of Grontleback elk bones.
Elks and their bones.
Horns, I meant to say. Grontleback elk horns.
Elk horns, yeah.
I promise you, I can read. So, the most popular version of the game is played with 2 teams of 8 players with only 6 on the platter field at once. Each team passes the Platterbone to one another, trying to avoid it being intercepted by the other team. And once one has the Platterbone, one may only take 2 steps with it before having to throw the Platterbone to a teammate or towards a goal. There are 5 circular goals set at different heights at each end of the platter field. They range in diameter from 150 centimetres wide to 36 centimetres wide. The largest goal is worth 1 point, with each goal getting smaller and worth an extra point till the smallest goal is worth 5.
Just like Quidditch, maybe.
Nothing at all like Quidditch.
Oh, this is nothing. This is nothing like Quidditch.
No.
This is like ground Quidditch.
It's Quidditch can bugger off. It's a terrible concept from beginning to end. So physical contact between players is only allowed within 2 meters of the Platterbone itself, and even then, only to lift up a member and throw them. It is a viable strategy to throw the Platterbone near an opponent where a teammate is ready to grapple them when the Platterbone is close enough to make it legal. It's also generally accepted, despite its ancient origins, to be quintessentially a human thing.
Interesting, okay.
Humans often are the cultural, they take on other bits and pieces, and so many different different ways, but everyone generally agrees that humans came up with Platterbone. Maybe it's the only really solid good thing they ever did.
Interesting, yeah. It's good. It's good for humans to have something, because in a wondrous magical world of people with horns and people with tails and people with whatever else that our fantasy creatures have, sharp ears, humans really need a thing, because we already know what humans are all about.
In Heliakon, and Domarin as a whole, they have Platterbone.
Platterbone. I like that.
I invented Frisbee.
You invented ultimate Frisbee.
Yes, fantasy Frisbee.
Super ultimate fantasy Frisbee.
You can blame our good friend Leo for that, who's very much into disc golf. And
disc golf is a real sport that is sort of like Frisbee. In fact, I think Leo would disagree, but it is exactly like Frisbee, except that you have to keep on buying loads and loads of Frisbees, and you can never stop. And I know this because he has gotten me into this sport, and I keep on buying these Frisbees, and I keep not getting better at this sport because I just keep buying Frisbees and then not practicing this real sport.
Hey, maybe when you get the right Frisbee, everything will just fall into place and you'll be the most amazing disc golfer.
Like Tiger Woods, but with less infidelity.
Yes, maybe sort of like Lion Forest.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Oh no, because then people say I'm lying.
Oh, right, okay.
When I tell them about how little infidelity there's going on in my life.
Oh, excellent point. Panther Grove.
Panther Grove. Yeah, okay, I like that.
All right, Mr. Yep. Grove. Shall we go away and prepare to war with one another?
We absolutely shall do that. Okay. I'm going to stop this recording. Going to get a glass of water.
In the grim darkness of the 21st century, there is only World War words.
We have returned from our banishment.
Oh, yeah.
Banishment to the fantasy mines.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, or shall I?
You went first during Fable Fodder, so you should go first during World War Words.
World War Words. We are ready for it. Let's talk about the holiday of Gruvolly. This is one I really enjoyed that. In fact, your theme today, very good. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that a little later, but Gruvolly is not a public holiday in the League, which seeks to distinguish itself in all ways from the Great Consociate. It is, however, a very important day with a feast and a celebration held in the evening, leading to the League's actual public holiday, the Day of Accords, the day after. Gruvolly, however, is celebrated as a combined holiday of three deities, known as the Virtuous Triad. Gruvold is the prime god of this triad, a being who rejected slavery in all its forms, a notion which appeals to the citizens and rulers of the Unfettered League. But on the night of Gruvolly, he is joined by Corendus, a god representing unity with nature, as well as Heligla, a goddess closely associated with the idea of urban order. In this way, Gruvold, Corendus, and Heligla are venerated as important deities who act as a kind of divine trinity to characterize the idea of peace. In the League, the Gruvolly feast is by far the most important way of venerating these gods. Eating well and sharing meals together is the very embodiment of peaceful existence. In the North, Gruvolly is a time of putting aside differences and making amends. This is especially vital leading to the Day of Accords, when citizens of the Unfettered League celebrate the symbolic idea that the society they live in is a free, peaceful, and egalitarian one. The Day of Accords is a holiday in which citizens rest, take stock of their lives, and engage in peaceful activities. A popular pastime on the Day of Accords is going on hikes with friends, giving gifts to estranged friends or family as a way of mending bridges, or in certain cases showing off how much better you are without them, as well as spending time in quiet contemplation. The gods venerated at Gruvolly are thus worshipped a second time on the Day of Accords: nature, peace, and order.
All right. Yeah, I love that. I don't really have any notes. It's it's perfect. And it makes sense that the Day of Accords is a celebration. Which makes me think about what do you think that, like, how do you think celebrating the Accords might look on the Great Consociate's side?
It's interesting. It's possible that it simply doesn't exist there. I think we have this idea that it's generally agreed upon that a certain, gods exist and a certain amount of gods exist, and some are venerated more than others.
I did just have a thought.
Yes.
So, no, I like your idea that, yes, the Great Consociate just doesn't celebrate the peace accords at all, and that they've got their own feast days for those other deities. But you know who definitely would celebrate the Day of the Accords? The Serpentine Guard.
The Serpentine Guard, yes.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, they would like that. Yeah, they would see it as I see that. Yeah,
the creation of their entity, and in many ways their own power.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, originally I didn't mean for the Day of Accords to be necessarily a celebration of like the peace accords, right?
Oh,
just accords in general. Coming
Yep.
to but actually that works quite well in that context as well.
It might work actually if so the Day of Accord existed long before the Accords, the peace treaty.
Yes.
It has just in Heliakon specifically become a day where that is particularly remembered, maybe?
Yeah, that's right. Because I guess for the Southerners, it would be a bit of a shameful thing, right? Because that's kind of when they kind of gave up, right? Not really, but
and it makes sense that they would actually sign the Bloody Avenues Accord on the Day of Accords.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got a bit of
cool.
we've got a bit of history in there too now.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have come to an accord.
Yeah. We have. So I've got a little bit on your Benson and Byrdes.
Oh, Benson, Byrdes. Okay.
Yes.
Let's hear it.
All right. So first off, not a change, just a little note that the halfling family, the Bensons, would be a cord, because I established that the families and tribes of halflings are called cords.
Of course.
Yes.
Makes sense.
The Benson Cord and Moira Benson are the primary opponents to Pekoslav's Byrde's efforts to expand into the Unfettered League, because the Benson Cord has such deep and historical ties to the Great Consociate. Moira sees the League as far too chaotic for good, safe investments and loans, which places the Sigiliac Bensons between the two, because while they have status with the Consociate, especially with their very real ties to the Sigiad Council, but the lure of profit from the economically more vibrant league, and the fact that the various Stygians within the family also see that contact as an opportunity to gain more information on the Consociate's foes and potentially plant more agents.
That's right.
So you have this three-way constant tension between them.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. That makes sense.
But I thought, aside from the internal conflict between the families that I described in there, Benson and Byrde also have enemies from within the twin senates of both Spiraxis and Heliakon, because I'm inventing a new character here. Konarch Kokora Rora, the elder Konarch of Heliakon, because you remember that Azil Juventus from episode 1 is the other Konarch.
I recall, yeah, the younger.
Yes. So Konarch Kokora Rora is an elderly orc with extremely traditional values, and he views the growth of the merchant class within the Great Consociate as a threat. He sees it as the first steps to the so-called egalitarianism and luminarchism that is the stinking rot at the heart of the League, and thus suspects all successful merchants and banks as having luminarchist tendencies despite the foolishness of that. So he's a force against BB&B, and also thus, Moira Benson, who wants power within the twin senates, a direct opponent there.
Makes sense. That makes sense. And that's a natural kind of tension there. That's great. Yeah. I love that.
Cool. All right. What's your next one?
My next one, all that I have done today is some more about Platterbone. It is a sad fact that no games of Platterbone have been played between the North and South since the time of the Bloody Avenues Agreement, but this is something which may change in the near future. There have been high-level meetings between cultural representatives from the Unfettered League and bureaucrats from the Great Consociate Empire recently considering just such a venture. Each side, of course, is hoping that this use of soft power will showcase the superiority of the great power behind the team. Sport can be a unifying aspect, but it can also also be a weapon to hone that kind of us versus them sentiment into a fine point. In any case, citizens on both sides have been keen for this to happen, and the Great Consociate has proposed the building of a great arena in South Heliakon where such games could be held. The Unfettered League, on the other hand, has suggested the project should be a joint venture and be built between the two sides of the Serpentine Wall. The governments of both sides actually see this latter idea as causing more headaches than is likely to solve in terms of both security and administration, but the League had to present an ideological stance as its first volley in what is likely to be a lengthy negotiation process. Meanwhile, two national teams are already being trained. The Unfettered League's Defiant Giants, named after the near-mythical creatures said to live in frozen palaces at the poles of the world, are made up of the best and brightest athletes from the League's territories. The team has held many practice matches in the north, by necessity being fundamental to the formation of the Delmaran Platterbone League, an association of 16 teams from across the continent in the north. The Defiant Giants are coached currently by Brox Delphin, a dwarf and veteran of the conflict which led to the city's partition in the first place. He is a naturally creative thinker, though humorless and straightforward in conversations. He has often proven himself an innovative strategist who is able to use the individual proficiencies of each player to best achieve victory. The Great Consociates team is also being prepared for the inevitable opportunity to test themselves against the Unfettered League's best. In contrast, the players of the Consociate Lake Eagles are drawn from the military almost exclusively. They are people who are well used to taking orders and are able to cope with the brutal regimen proposed by the team's coach, a Goliath noble named Grotk Beldoct. Beldoct himself has no formal experience as a coach, or even as a player of Platterbone, but he is a former propaganda bureaucrat of the Empire and knows exactly how hard to drive his players. The few who are unable to make it in the meat grinder of training and most likely performance-enhancing concoctions that he brews up for his team are quickly forgotten in place of new faces who do have what it takes. There are no losers among the Lake Eagles, only conquerors.
I'm trying to think of the name of the actor in that Rocky movie, and he's big and extraordinarily blonde, the Russian fellow.
Russian man.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll look it up.
Okay. As soon as you were describing the Goliath coach, that was who leapt into my head, even though you said he's not a sportsman, but I just feel like he needs to be in the, TV show version of our of Heliakon. That's
Ivan Drago. They probably called him Ivan though.
Yeah. And I mean that was the character name. But yeah, that
was the character name. Yeah.
You're
thinking of the actual
actor.
man.
But yes, I was. But that it doesn't really matter. Dolph Lundgren. Yes,
Dolph Lundgren.
He's been in a great many films.
What a good name.
It is. It really
no,
is.
It's actually Hans Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, well, there you go. I didn't know that. I just knew him as Dolph Lundgren. But yes,
he's a Swedish American.
In my head, that's who is playing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
I think Stola Tamda of the Interbellum Guard of the Serpentine Wall.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a story there where she's actually on board for getting the game to be played in the between the walls in the neutral zone.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm seeing the edges of like a story where the inherent violence and the conflict in the zone, perhaps over the remains of a certain artifact that she disappeared with, would begin to fuel it. Or
definitely,
something.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's also, if it ended up being held in a place like that, then there is a lot more scope for sort of intercity interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think from a practical perspective of both of these governments, there's a very risky idea.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a massive breach in their very careful security. And let's be honest with you, neither side really wants their populace to mix with the other populace. They might get unfortunate ideas that the enemy are just humans and, well, they're people, I mean to say, and might therefore have more trouble murdering them at a later date.
Quite possibly, yeah. Or they can highlight how savage and merciless the other team is. That's
relatively easy to do on the teams, but when you seat humans together, like either you get a riot or you get friends, and neither plays well into what they want.
I guess I don't see why the arena couldn't just be segregated as well. Just highly segregated. Just have a big wall there.
Yeah.
A wall
More
within
walls.
a wall. Yeah. I actually don't know. I think this comes from me not understanding how either architecture or sports work.
I'm not particularly brilliant with either but I love this. This is, as I say, ideas and stories. I'm definitely going to do a little call out box in one of the PDFs about that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. All right, let's go with your ideas.
All
Because
right.
I've run out. That was
Oh,
all of my
right.
contributions,
Okay, so
yeah.
I mostly now just have a bunch of little bits and pieces.
Yeah,
so
give me
that,
some
that
little
kind of
bits.
works.
I love
All right.
little bits.
So first off, about the Chods in particular, the group of like sneak thieves and cut pursers in that little triad of gangs.
Dirty Chods.
Yeah. So Viola Krob is the one that really has this burning desire to make the Chods greater than ever. And the reason what's fueling her desire to do so is one beautiful and doomed emotion. Viola is in love with Ilgrim Pockenock, the gentle Goliath son of Targan Pockenock, the leader of the Chods in Northern Heliakon.
It's all about love.
It is. Their secret is only known by the Hand Templar Line Bratbert, who facilitates their rare and passionate meetings. The Templar hopes to bring both young folk out of the shadows and gutters of Heliakon. Viola hopes to unite both gangs under her leadership and allow her to openly love her beau, while Ilgrim would be just delighted being wherever Viola is and raising a small avalanche of Goliath children, because they're all fools.
Interesting.
Am I drawing on Romeo and Juliet extraordinarily heavily? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they will die in the course of this romance.
Yeah.
For sure.
For sure. But sort of continuing with the theme of the gangs, so one of the things you talked about was that the Chods, Hobbs, and Tomeworms not just work together, but I believe what was the phrase you used? You described it as a great deal of interpersonal drama drives the lives of these gang members, and that struck me. So I want them to have a sort of meta culture of sorts that is actually based around like drama and theatrical to some extent, because they are forced to work together, but competing for resources and territory, members, that sort of thing. They must work together because the Butternut Boys are so powerful, so strong. As you said, they're the biggest gang in Southern Heliakon.
That's
that
right.
Individually, the Butternut Boys will eventually just wipe them all out. So over the last, say, decade, the three small gangs are roughly working together. But if they do their usual gang warfare, they would just weaken each other to the point where they're all wiped out. So now they replace those with displays of intimidation, shows of strength and skill, charismatic and clever threats, and even dramatic, although entirely acted, and renditions of what one group will do to one another. And there's this like complex but well understood culture and idea about which side wins and who wins the conflict.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah.
That idea came out of because I started with the whole Romeo and Juliet thing. You had this line about drama, and I was like, yeah, there's a sort of Shakespearean Gangs of Verona. They say witty lines to one another, and someone goes, yeah, okay, they win that one, so they get this street now until we challenge them again. Like, they are conflicts. It's just that rather than beating each other up and murdering each other and so forth in traditional gang warfare, because that simply weakens both sides, they instead, one side will begin an insult off. And because they've started with insults, the other side only responds with insults, and whoever sort of wins by general acclaim wins that conflict.
Okay, that makes a great deal of sense. Yeah, because then you can't have every conflict ending in a stabbing, essentially, because eventually you just run out of members.
Yeah, and they're all dedicated to trying to hold on to their own thing. Obviously, each, the Chods would prefer to take over the Hobbs and the Tomeworms, but if they push it, everybody becomes too weak and everybody ends up being a Butternut Boy. And let's face it, you're then working for a nutter.
For a nutter and his nut butter.
Yes. Nope. I might want to cut that part out. Or maybe not.
Yeah, I'm going to.
Good. Last little bit there. I'm not going to talk much about it, but you mentioned that the leader of the Tomeworms might have some sorcerer's power. And instantly that told me how we're going to do sorcerers in Heliakon.
Ooh, okay.
So rather than traditional sorcerers in D&D being from bloodlines and ancestry, instead, sorcery is one of the rare results of being an osmote.
Oh, okay.
So the nature of being an osmote means you're in contact and get a sort of permanent connection to magic, and that gives you that small spell list, lots of magic style of sorcerers with some interesting negatives that we'll come up with. So I'm not going to talk much about it because that really does feel like something that I'll explore, or you perhaps you'll explore. We'll explore.
We'll explore it together, hand in hand. That
All
sounds
right.
amazing.
Yeah, no, your idea, man.
Look, it's all coming together in a nice little package.
Yeah, and I'd like to do something interesting and different with each of the existing classes. So just a couple of points with the districts, because they're also wonderful. Again, the names are brilliant.
Thank you.
Riverwind, with its stench and pollution from its bridge works and the leatherworks and so forth, is just upriver from Melodwin. That's one of the reasons why the district is so poor and ill-favoured.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Mossball Lakes, with its big stone temple and its history of fighting, is the origin, not the origin, what's something I'm looking for here, is the location for the largest temple to Gruvolly outside of the Consociate.
That makes, I like that actually, yeah.
And I like the idea that it is the nucleus to a rival hierarchy, to the much larger one in the Empire. And whilst it's not heretical, they do refuse to accept the authority of the Consociate various Arch-Templari, and there's a schism growing.
Like the Catholic Church in China.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It exists. There is a Catholic Church in China, but because every priest has to essentially be vetted by the Chinese Communist Party. So there's the degree to which they can be said to take orders from the Vatican is kind of a balancing act where they can say they do, but the Vatican says, well, actually, we don't really have access to these people, and et cetera, et cetera. I actually went to a Catholic church in Shanghai, and it's very beautiful, very empty, but there are little bits of propaganda here and there. But yeah, like there's a possibility of a schism between those churches.
Wow, and you get another Pope and anti-Pope going on.
Yeah.
Or maybe in this case it'd be Pope and Sino-Pope?
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose this is one of those interesting government things, like what will happen with the Dalai Lama.
I only have one final thing, because of course I had to do something with the Snad.
Of course you had.
Yeah.
Come on, tell us.
So the Snad is indescribable, literally. So for all its ubiquitousness, the only thing that anyone can say about the Snad is that it is somewhat unpleasant and annoying. Even then, they're not actually describing the Snad, simply the emotions and reactions that it inspires in them.
Do you think the Snad is like a quantum particle? By observing it, you change it?
I think it's something like that, like a magical version thereof, that yes, it is observable but indescribable.
Why would anyone live there? I guess the property prices would be pretty good.
That's pretty much what I was thinking, that yes, it's definitely like firmly lower middle class and poor.
It's like Elizabeth.
Yes. So for a brief while, people tried to study the mysterious phenomenon, but since its nature just utterly rejects any attempt to learn about it, and the various attempts to do so have just ceased out of frustration. So now it's just one of those things you have to deal with in the big, bustling, weird city of Heliakon. It's just a pity no one asked the goblins, because they can describe it plenty.
Okay.
And that's all I've written.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because
no one would think to ask the goblins. They've got nothing useful to say.
Why would you ask the goblins? They're just constantly talking about how moist they are.
That's so far practically all they've talked about. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic! I love that, man.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't have any war to do on you with you to you.
Yeah. I don't have anything really with your ideas either. Again, it was one of those, I wanted to expand but not challenge anything.
I think in the future we should do one where we are very brutal with each other's ideas.
Yeah, perhaps just for one episode we say, all right, every single idea has to have a major challenge to it, just to see what it's like.
Major challenge, yeah. Then perhaps we'll reduce the amount of ideas that we have.
So we've got a bit more room for discussion.
Yeah. That sounds good.
All
well, right. I suppose now that we have finished World War Words,
we are jumping to conclusions.
In the grim darkness of the 21st century, there is only jumping to conclusions.
We are jumping to conclusions. Let's jump inside. Would you like to jump to conclusions first? Please jump to conclusions first.
I'm a very jumpy conclusory man. That's not remotely true.
I like to conclude things.
I do like the fact that we did have another little weird bit of synchronicity when it came to races, that you started talking about mentioning halflings and the Bensons and all sort of jazz, and I had deliberately mentioned them in the Catacord.
I feel like almost a contractual obligation to mention races that you can play in Dungeons and Dragons Dragons right at this moment. But also the idea for me that all the races are sort of, like that Star Trek is just humans with funny foreheads.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, in Dungeons and Dragons, and the way that I've seen a lot of people play them is in that way. They're all just people. So does it in the end matter what people they are? Well, it does, because we're talking about cultures and things like that. And while in the real world, race is a social construct, species I think works in a similar way in Dungeons and Dragons. Also, races have been renamed species now in the new player's handbook,
right?
Which I think is fine.
Yes,
yeah. I think I listened to a podcast where someone was very angry about that, but it should always have been species, really. I think.
Yeah, it's one of those things where nobody in the RPG world was using it in a biological sense in the same way we don't.
Yeah, the meaning in our context is wildly different.
But on the other hand, because it is just it's not a word with a lot of emotion behind it. It's very much just a technical term. So changing a technical term to a more accurate technical term really shouldn't evoke an emotional response unless there's something else going on.
Yeah, it's meaningless to me. You could call them,
folk, ancestry, kins.
Ancestry. Yeah.
It all works.
Yeah, especially in versions of fantasy games. There are a lot of fantasy games where everything can be a half everything else and stuff like that.
Yeah,
although that is no longer the case in Dungeons and Dragons. I believe you can no longer be a half elf or half orc,
or rather, that's sort of just an in-universe term for various different things. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
I don't plan on giving WotC/Hasbro any more of my money for for quite some time until they.
I'm going to continue. Because I'm interested in I guess the meta of the changes that are happening. Why are they happening? And are they happening for good reasons or bad reasons or stupid reasons?
Well, the trouble is that I generally believe that the vast majority of people doing the work at the coalface, as it were, are brilliant, amazing individuals for the most part.
Some of the art in the new player's handbook just absolutely blows my mind. It's so good.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's and when we're talking about kinds of things that a lot of people roll their eyes at, but diversity in representation, it's fantastic. It makes me feel great. What a great step. Could have been done a bit earlier, but whatever.
But like the Titanic in Ghostbusters 2, better late than never.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I like it too. As a extraordinarily straight white man, it's still one of those things. I remember going to the Gold Coast and just in one particular area, it was just a very didn't have a lot of other people. It was just a lot of white folk. Unlike Adelaide, which you don't have to go very far to see. You're always seeing lots of different people. And it was strange to realize that was very much my norm. And that to just look around and only see one kind of people it struck me. On my first day there, I was like, oh, yeah, this is weird. And it's much more comfortable to see that in art because it does make it the norm, because it ought to be the norm.
It does, and especially in, a multicultural society that we live in, right?
Yeah.
I think I probably on a daily basis see more Asian people than white people, especially where I work.
Yeah.
It's a very heavily Vietnamese and Cambodian area. In fact, most of my students are from those places.
I love to walk, and we've got a large number of immigrants from the Indian Peninsula, and they like to go for a walk of an evening, and I don't blame them because it's lovely, and it's nice because I'll often go for a walk myself. Sometimes with a book, sometimes it's when I do my shopping. But now I'm sort of seeing the same people, and I give them a smile and a nod, and they've got their kids with them, playing and generally being adorable, and it's great.
I don't. I try not to meet people's gaze on my walks. It makes me more comfortable.
Fair.
If I could be invisible, I would be.
Right.
Not for weird reasons. Well, maybe for weird reasons, but not primarily because of that. I would like a Harry Potter style invisibility cloak. I just don't like. I like being surrounded by people, but I don't like them acknowledging me. Yeah, I don't want to interact with them. We'll explore the depth of my depravity
and invisibility.
And invincibility, perhaps, in later episodes.
I think so. Until then, we will see you all anon.
Indeed, we will. What's anon? Is that like Anonymous from like the Anonymous,
No,
the
no,
mask?
it's an old-fashioned way of just saying later. It's very... I'm in a Shakespearean mood. You started it.
It's what about the Guy Fawkes mask?
That's a different anon.
Do you think I think Anonymous are so cool. I think they're so cool. I think they could hack the planet if they wanted to, but the fact that they don't makes me angry.
And now I think we might want to play ourselves out, as we have been talking for a very long time.
Oh yeah, so long. Too long. Goodbye, Aaron. Goodbye, my friend. I may never see you again.